So this is Love, Chapter 18. On most occasions, Genevieve d'Orleans would have been the last person Ferdinand wanted to see. But today he sought her out. He needed information, and he didn't trust that doe-eyed servant girl to get it from him for him soon enough. Luckily, he knew just how to needle the king's sister. I do not recall inviting you to tea, Ferdinand, Genevieve said, receiving him frostily. I'll have coffee then, thank you. The Grand Duke snapped his fingers, sending the nearest servant into a frenzied dance to fetch a fresh pot. Genevieve glared at him as he took the seat across from her. That isn't what I meant. His cup of coffee arrived promptly. Crossing one leg over the other, Ferdinand took a sniff before sipping. What do you want? Blunt as always, said Ferdinand affably. I must say, I'm pleased to find you haven't changed after all these years. I merely wish to have a conversation with you, Genevieve. It's been so long since you've been here at court, and with all the excitement over Charles' missing bride-to-be, I haven't had a chance to properly welcome you back. Narrowing her eyes at him, Genevieve furiously swirled her spoon in her tea, creating a miniature tempest in the cup. You welcome me back? I can't imagine whose company I'd find more venomous, yours or a viper's. I have never understood what happened to us, Ferdinand forged on. We used to be friends once. Don't you remember? No, I don't. We might never have trusted one another, but we respected each other, he amended. I sense now that most regrettably is no longer the case. I find it hard to respect a two-faced scoundrel. If only my brother could see you as I do. Ferdinand blinked. You wound me, Genevieve. That's your highness to you. Let's not play a game of rank now, else I'll remind you that it is thanks to me that you were permitted to keep your title. Thanks to you, Genevieve scoffed. Huh! Thanks to you, my husband died in shame. Thanks to you, my children were banished from Aurelius and robbed of their birthright. It could have been much worse, replied Ferdinand smoothly, for you get to expend their exile on an estate provided for by the king. And lo, and now you've returned, and most have forgotten the degree of your treachery, even the king, it appears. She was struggling to keep her composure. Ferdinand noticed how taut her cheeks had become, how the pulse in her neck thickened and throbbed. She peeled off her glove one finger at a time, her voice flat and wooden when she spoke next. If you are trying to blackmail me, Ferdinand, go ahead. I don't care what anyone at court thinks of me, least of all my brother. Not even your nephew? Your influence on young Charles is unacceptable. He doesn't understand what a threat your beliefs are to the future of this nation. To her credit, she barely flinched. You dare to imply that I don't care about Aurelius? My family has ruled this country for centuries. My ancestors tilled and found this nation with their blood and tears before you first arrived. I am not the only one. You've been away from court for far too long, and yet now you frolic back in the palace and assume your position as the king's sister? Why now, Genevieve? The Duchess set her teacup on its saucer with a sharp clatter. Why don't you ask that little spy you've planted in my household? Ferdinand choked on his coffee. Promptly reaching for his handkerchief, he blew his nose, then faced Genevieve, his posture stiffening. Just what do you mean? Don't try to be coy. I know my attendant is one of your spies. That innocent-looking creature? Ferdinand sputtered, pretending to be offended. She looks like she's barely spent a day out of the countryside. I wouldn't bother. Yes, that's precisely why you picked her, but unfortunately for you, she's sharp enough to see you for what you are, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and she isn't afraid of wolves. He raised a thick eyebrow. Isn't she now? Where is the young lady anyway? Cinder Girl is at the library, fetching a new novel for me. A book? Yes, Ferdinand. Unlike you, I have hobbies other than scheming and conniving. Yes, I quite remember. Yours are more in the line of deceit and treason. Why, you? She'd stepped into his net, and he needed to proceed carefully if he was going to ensnare her. He clasped his hands together and rested them on his lap. In his smoothest, most all-knowing tone, he said, After all these years, after publicly swearing you'd never return, there must be a reason you've come back. I heard my nephew had come back from university. I wanted to see him. He didn't believe her, not for an instant. King George's sister was a skilled deceiver, and her denial was too quick. You and I both know that this is untrue. Ferdinand paused deliberately. You forget it is I who have the king's ear and the council's trust. I am aware His Majesty is planning to pass the throne to Charles. That's why you're here. The barest of flinches flickered across Genevieve's face, but Ferdinand caught it. No matter how she denied it now, he had gleaned the truth. She pressed her lips tight. I am here to help Charles find a wife. He needs to marry a princess, said Ferdinand. Preferably a princess of one of Aurelius's neighboring kingdoms, such as Lourdes. King George has ruled for 40 years. No matter what kind of sovereign Charles turns out to be, the transition between reigns will be difficult. We must strengthen our position by allying ourselves with Lourdes so that our enemies do not pounce on any perceived weakness. Aurelius has been at peace for nearly half a century, Genevieve said calmly. What makes you think all of a sudden we have enemies that are eyeing our territories? We have been at peace because my father was vigilant, and I have carried on his task of safeguarding his kingdom from the likes of men such as your husband, who would open our gates to evils such as magic and a more powerful middle class, said Genevieve snidely. You seem rather sore, Ferdinand. The people are gaining more power, with or without magic. The riots will be contained. They are but a trifle compared to the chaos and instability magic would have brought. Fairies consider themselves above the law, what with their unnatural abilities and bringing aid to those they deem good and worthy. Yes, but if the fairies happen to bless princes and dukes, that's all right. A hierarchy of ranks brings about order. Peasants don't deserve fairy guardians waving their problems away with magic wands. I think you'd better leave. The Grand Duke pretended not to hear her. You and your late husband might as well have cursed Aurelius's future when you put the idea in the king's head to send the prince to university. Genevieve hissed at the Grand Duke. Curse Aurelius's future? What century do you think we live in? Times are changing. Yes, which is exactly why we must remain vigilant. Mark my words, Charles is young and idealistic, and these ideas he's picked up of strengthening the country from within and empowering the people will bring ruin to Aurelius, just as your husband nearly brought ruin to this monarchy. Genevieve clenched her teeth. Her narrow face had grown tight with anger. You've overstayed your welcome, Ferdinand. Your coffee is cold. Quite so, quite so. In his most cordial tone, he said, I look forward to the party tomorrow night, Your Highness. Good day. He bowed, but she refused to acknowledge him. Just as well. She would be so angry for the rest of the day, she'd want to do nothing but avoid him. While Genevieve was deciding on napkin colors and music selections for the masquerade tomorrow, he would make a few arrangements of his own. Arrangements that would ensure the future of this kingdom, and most important, his position in it.